Good afternoon, class. I hope you're enjoying your weekend, as that's probably where most of you are watching this. If you're not watching it in class, you're watching it over the weekend, so I hope you're enjoying it. We're going to continue with 8.5 today. Now, we're going to continue with the concept that we taught in 8.4 as well. We're simplifying, we're canceling, and going from 8.5, we have to add and subtract fractions, and when we do that, we have to have common denominators. So we're kind of combining a lot of things that we've talked about the last couple days. We're also going to be combining our concept of fraction divided by a fraction, which is what we have here. We have 2/3 divided by 1/4. And we can write this in two different ways. We can write this with a line, like a ratio, a proportion, a fraction, however you want to say it. We can write this with a line, or we can write this with the actual division sign. Either way, they mean the exact same thing. 2/3 divided by 1/4. Now, our job is to take these and to do what we did last time. We never want to actually deal with the division question. What are we going to do? Anytime we see a division question, we always do the same thing. We're dividing by a fraction, so we're going to take the division, turn it into multiplication, and instead of dividing by 1/4, we're going to be multiplying by 4/1. Multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, so taking that same concept. Now, when you multiply fractions, again, remember, you're multiplying the top, you're multiplying the bottom, so we have 8/3. Now, we do not, remember, when we have fractions and it's multiplication or division, we do not have to have common denominators. Just multiply straight across. Now, we're going to take this and make it much more difficult. And the reason it's going to be much more difficult is because we're going to put polynomials into it. Okay, polynomials means you have more than one term, you have x's, x squareds, all that kinds of good stuff, and that means we're going to be factoring as well. Okay, so again, like I said, we're going to be taking what we've done the last couple days and truly combining it today. Biggest difference is this is how we're going to start out. We're going to start out with fractions over fractions, and we're going to have to simplify them, turn them into multiplication, and then solve them. So we have several multi-step questions in here with factoring, and we all know how much we love factoring. Okay, so we only have a couple examples, so let's start with the first one. 2 divided by x plus 2 over 1 divided by x plus 2 plus 2 divided by x. So as you can see, complex question, a lot of stuff going on here. Okay, the first thing, remember, my whole goal is to be able to take a fraction divided by another fraction, and what? This is division, so our whole goal is to make this multiplication, and we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, but in order to get to this step, where I have one fraction over one fraction, I have to simplify this as much as possible first. The top is already simplified. Okay, so this one's a little bit easier because 2 over x plus 2 you can't do anything with. It's already simplified, so that is just going to stay the same. The bottom is what we're concerned with. We have to simplify this. We have to combine it. Now, going from what we talked about yesterday, how do we combine addition? The denominators have to be the same when it is addition or subtraction. So right now I have an x plus 2. And remember, if you need to put parentheses around that, do it. The x plus 2 is a factor. They go together. And an x. And remember, this is kind of like an x plus 0. It's just an x. So what's going to be my greatest common denominator for this? X plus 2 and x. I can't break this up. I can't break this up. So my greatest common denominator is both of them. X and x plus 2. Now, going off of what we did yesterday, we have to multiply by what we're missing. So in the first one, we're missing x, so we multiply the bottom and the top by x. On the second one, what are we missing for our greatest common denominator? We have the x, we're missing the x plus 2. Okay, so in a sense, we're doing the bottom section, the denominator, as a question in itself right now. Okay, so we're adding these together. Now, denominators are going to be the same. They're both going to be x plus 2. Now remember, on the top, we want to multiply through. X times 1 is just x. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay? Again, I haven't touched the top yet. The top is simplified. There's nothing I can do with that. Okay, so the top is still just going to stay. I'm not doing anything with that right now. I need to keep simplifying this bottom as much as I can. So the denominators are now the same, so now I can combine these. Okay, so the denominator stays consistent. I'm adding the top. So I have x plus 2x plus 4. That gives me 3x plus 4. This is now my simplified fraction over a fraction. Okay, but you have to simplify what you have first. You have to combine what you have first. So I have a fraction, simplified fraction, divided by a simplified fraction. Now, this next step, all I did was take this and rewrite it. 2 divided by x plus 2, right here. Remember, this line right here means division. So I put divided by 3x plus 4 over x times x plus 2. So all I did was rewrite it. Most of you are going to skip this step. Okay? You know this is division. So what's our rule? You take the division and you multiply by the reciprocal. So we're taking this and flipping. So we're taking our division and we're multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay, so like I said, a lot of you will see that up here. We're going to take our top, and instead of dividing by what we have on the bottom, we're going to take this and we're going to multiply by its reciprocal. So a lot of you are just going to skip this step, and that is just fine. Just make sure you multiply by the reciprocal. So whatever you're dividing by, you have to flip. So we have 2 over x plus 2 times, flip your bottom, x times x plus 2 over 3x plus 4. Now you're at the same place you've been for the last couple days. You've already simplified, you've already factored, you've already done the hard part. Now you have to cancel. Okay, and again, if you can't remember without putting these parentheses here that they belong together, make sure you write them. What can we simplify? I have an x plus 2 on top and bottom. Is there anything else that's constant, that's the same? Remember, we can't take the x out of here. This x goes with the 3. So nothing else can be simplified. So we have 2x on the top, 3x plus 4 on the bottom. Let's look at another one. Couple things I'm going to do first. I have to simplify my top and I have to simplify my bottom. First thing is I'm going to turn everything into fractions so I know what I'm looking at. This 4 is not a fraction, so make it a fraction. It's 4 over 1. This x to the negative 2 is not a fraction, so make it a fraction. But is this x squared over 1? This is x to the negative 2. What do you do when you have negative powers? Where does this need to belong? Where does this belong? It needs to go to the bottom. So that is 1 over x squared. Okay, so your first step, simplify what you can and turn everything into fractions. So I took those two, simplified them, turned them into fractions. Now, this is where I was saying before, you're basically treating the top like it's its own question right now, and you're going to treat the bottom like it's its own question. Okay, you need to simplify the top, simplify the bottom before you worry about combining them. Okay, so when we're looking at the top, what's my greatest common denominator up here? I have an x and I have a 1. Well, hopefully you can see that in your head. That one's easy. If it's an x and a 1, your greatest common denominator is just x. On the bottom, I have x squared and x. Okay, so again, what does x squared mean? It means there's 2. So when I'm talking about greatest common denominator, I'm looking for the one that's the biggest because I got to turn everything into it. So I have 1 and I've got 2, so my greatest common denominator will be x squared. So on the bottom, or on the top, my greatest common denominator is x, so the left side's good. The right side, we need to multiply by x. On the bottom, my greatest common denominator is x squared. The left's already x squared. The right is x to the first, so we need to multiply that side by x. Okay, again, we're going to continue dealing with the top by itself, dealing with the bottom by itself. So what do we have up here? We have 4 over x minus, this is now what? This is now 4x over x. On the bottom, we have 1 over x squared, and this one over here is now 1x over x squared. Okay, again, keep going. Simplify your top, simplify your bottom. My bottom denominator is now xx, so now I can bring these together. So I have 4 minus 4x. Are these like? Can I actually subtract these and say 4 minus 4 is 0? No. This one has an x, this one's a constant. So it's just 4 minus 4x. There's nothing you can do right now with that. In the denominator, I have x squared, so we can combine them. So we're adding 1 plus x. Again, can I combine those? Nope, it's just 1 plus x. Or can I make that x plus 1? It's the same thing. Now, we finally have gotten to our simplified fractions. So we have a fraction over a fraction. They're simplified. So what do? We're going to change the division and turn it into multiplication. But when we do that, what do we have to do to the bottom? We have to multiply by the reciprocal, so we have to take the bottom and flip it. So again, most of you are going to skip this step. We have to take this x plus 1 over x squared, and we have to turn it into multiplication and flip it. So it's now x squared over x plus 1. So if you don't want to write that step down, don't. But if you do, that's fine. Now again, you've already simplified. You've already done your factoring. So now make sure there's nothing else you can do and see if there's anything that we can cancel. What does this mean? This 2 means I have 2 x's. Well, I got 1 x down here. So I have 2 x's on the top, 1 x on the bottom. So one of them cancels up here. So I'm left with 1, and the one on the bottom's gone. And again, if you need to do this to remember, put your parentheses around that. X plus 1, negative 1 minus x. You can't do anything. So here's your answer. Now, those of you who understand factoring, who understand positives and negatives, watch what I'm going to do here. This, depending on what book and what test you're taking, can be simplified. I can take this 1 minus x and take out a negative 1, because we don't like negative x's. So if I do that, this is negative 1 plus x, which is actually, bring this negative to the front, negative 4x, x minus 1 over x plus 1. Okay, and like I said, that's just depending on what book, what test you're taking. But some books don't like negative x's inside of here, so they'll make you take out a negative 1 to make it a positive. Okay, and again, sometimes that might help you because you might be able to cancel. Okay, but in this one, x plus 1, x minus 1 are different. You can't cancel, but sometimes it will help. Okay, so keep that in the back of your head. Now, only 3 examples today. Here's our last example. On this one, the top, there's nothing we can do, okay? Now, I just said there's nothing we can do. I kind of lied. We can't add or subtract. There's nothing to add or subtract, but there is something we can do to simplify this. I've got a 3 and a 3, okay? So what can I do down here? I can take out a 3, and then what am I left with? I'm left with x squared minus, when I take 3 out of 3, it's 1. Okay, so that's all we're going to do on the top right now. On the bottom, since it's a plus sign, I need to combine them. But before I can combine them, since I'm adding, they have to be the same. Well, on the left, all I have is x plus 1. And in order to figure out what this is, to combine them, I have to factor this. So I have 3 terms. So this is my trial and error. What multiplies to negative 3 adds to negative 2. This is going to be negative 3 and a positive 1. So I did 2 things in my first step. I took out the 3 up on the top. The second thing I did was I factored down here on the bottom so I can find my denominator. This is x minus 3 and x plus 1. Now the top, I'm done. It's just going to stay for right now. Okay, there's nothing I can do. The bottom, I've got an x plus 1. So when I'm talking about my greatest common denominator, it's got to incorporate everything, remember? So I've got an x plus 1, which takes care of this right here. But what am I missing still? I'm still missing that x minus 3. So my greatest common denominator has to have both of those. So what am I going to do? The left-hand side, I have x plus 1, but I'm missing the x minus 3. So I have to multiply top and bottom by that x minus 3. The right-hand side has both of them. So do I need to multiply? No, it already has them both. Okay, so from this step to the next one, the only thing I'm doing is multiplying by this x minus 3 to get my denominator the same. So I have 1 times x, 1 times negative 3. So that is x minus 3. And then I went ahead and added this 3x on there. So I have x minus 3 from right here, and then plus 3x. Now, this is my big step. That's my simplified fraction divided by a fraction. Okay, so that's when you know you're getting there. You got a fraction over a fraction, it's simplified. Okay, so next step. And most of you, well, some of you probably have already seen this, okay, but I waited one more step to do so. Right here, x squared minus 1. I said we're simplified, but technically I can go one more step. What is x squared minus 1? Can I factor this? Perfect squared minus a perfect squared. 1 is a perfect. It is 1 times 1. Okay, so go ahead and factor. If you see something else that you missed, you can factor. Go ahead and do it. So x squared minus 1 breaks up, and it's x plus 1 and x minus 1. Now I'm going to take this and flip it. So I have my fraction divided by my fraction. Okay, and what are we going to do? We're going to turn this division, which is right here. We have division, and we're going to flip the bottom. Remember, you're flipping what you're dividing by. So 2 over 3, x minus 1, x plus 1 stays. And this division, this line, turns into multiplication, and we flip our bottom. X plus 1, x minus 3 over 4x minus 3. Again, don't have to show that step. Now, we've already factored. We took care of that x squared minus 1, so we factored everything, so cancel. I got an x plus 1 on both. Do I have anything else? This is an x minus 3. This is a 4x minus 3, so those are different. I got a 2, I got a 3. I can't simplify those. So I have 2x minus 3 divided by 3, x minus 1, 4x minus 3. There's nothing else I can cancel. Sorry. There's nothing else I can cancel, so that's my answer. Last thing, just to make sure we understand, we're not actually going to solve this question, okay? But understand that we very well likely could have two fractions on the top with an addition or subtraction sign that we will have to simplify, and on the bottom. So make sure, treat the top like it's its own question, combine these, simplify them, and treat the bottom like it's its own question, combine them and simplify them. So in a sense, you're doing two questions in one. Combine the top, figure it out, combine the bottom, figure it out, and then do your flipping. Okay, but take your time. There's so many places to make mistakes on these. Take your time, make sure you slow down. Here's your homework, and as you notice, there's only 4 questions, okay? 13, 14, and 15 on B, 13 on C. Take your time, show your work. There's a lot of places to make mistakes, a lot of work to show. Show your work, okay? And get through these 4 questions for today.